Welcome. This is Mindful Monday's exploration of coming home to yourselves. And as I was gathering and curating that idea about looking at how much is out there and what would help us the most in terms of our own next level or understanding of what that means, coming home to ourselves. So I appreciate the exploration that some of you have brought forward. And how do we make that shift when we're outside, externally driven? And how do we shift back to coming home, whether it's a sore shoulder, as I've been experiencing, whether there's intensity in our lives, such as conflict or worrying about another? And how do we allow that to be there without letting it obsess with our minds? So we have this personal and subjective interior world and experience. And when we can bring a tenderness to that, we can awaken to the inner world with more ease and not get swept up in the outer world. So when we think of what does it mean to be embodied and awake, and think of yourself right now as you're listening to this, am I inside my own body and present here and now? You know, sometimes I've sat in meditations where from the outside, you might see a calm, present human body, and I might actually be calm and present and in the moment, or I might be vroom, 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 and my outside body looks the same, doesn't it? So imagine a meditation where you do feel calm, present, connected, maybe in this moment, and then let the mind wander and worry about someone else or think about this or be busy up in here. And we're not embodied, we're not present. So the exploration is, how do we step back into ourselves so that we can actually be here over and over again? So the gateway for our embodiment is the here and now. And the body is the way that can allow us, because the body can only live in the here and now. So as I described my shoulder where I would lift it, it's a little bit better today. And I'd go like that because the physicality of the injury was so intense that in that moment, all I could do was just go breathe into the intensity. So it brings me back in the body. So when we don't have injuries, when we don't have things outside that are making us intense, how do we continue to return back? Because as we practice, we can do that more often. So connected conscious, connected body mind. And this includes, of course, as we know, we practice over and over again, our thoughts. So right now, noticing where your thoughts are, your emotions, your awareness of your body, sounds, and the breath. The breath is the only one we really have choice over, right? So the body's here. And then when we're disconnected, this is what Gabor Mate is talking about in the Myth of Normal. We get disconnected from body, mind, and then we're like, blah, 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 and we're not even in the body. So this is what we keep practicing, why I spend so much time at the beginning of our meditations grounding through the body, because this is our way into the presence. The second aspect that we talk about in coming home to ourselves is the stories that we tell ourselves over and over again. The body gives form to the mind's stories, and it gives structure to our emotions and experiences. So by learning to drop the stories, whether it's about worrying about someone else, this person, something's happened over here and I'm worrying outside, how do I still allow my concern and care and love for that person and come back? Come back. Maybe hold them in my heart consciously for a breath or 10 or the whole meditation without getting trapped into the worrying and the stories about what's going to happen. And that, if it's someone close to me, that takes some time. And my daughter announced last week at Family Zoom that she's pregnant again. And I had no notice. And I had this kind of slight moment of panic, and she saw it on my face. They're already stretched in their resources, stretched in their jobs, and to bring another baby into this world during this climate catastrophe. And I really had to work through and come back to presence and acknowledge that I have concerns and fears and worries about just them and then another child in this planet when we're in so much trouble. And I sat there that night having some serious anxiety as I wasn't sitting, I was lying down. And I imagined 30 years from now, this baby being 30. And in 2050, they're saying we're going to be really hitting the climate catastrophe, consequences, even if we stopped everything now. So how do I hold with tenderness this new being in my daughter's belly that's growing and still acknowledge my own realistic fear and still support her? She called me crying later saying, "You're our person. We need you to do this journey." So how do we hold that when we think of others? So if we have body tightness, which this might be connected to that, it's often, but not always, connected to emotional reactivity, right? We worry about the past and the future. I don't know about you, but I get all my shoulders up in my ears and I get all gritty and tough. And so how do I keep allowing myself to relax? Then I kind of feel guilty that my daughter saw that look on my face, right? About, and then I have to let that go. That was my actual reaction, was as much concern, if not more, than joy and celebration. And then I can get into the fantasy, I wish it was different, instead to own that and say it gave her permission to say, we're worried too, and to come back to celebration for her because I want to be there for her. So there's two parts to acceptance, they say, in coming home to ourselves. The first one in seeing what's occurring inside of our body. My need to kind of control outside, my shoulders go up, I end up with a shoulder, and how do I come back and keep soothing and relaxing and surrendering while not kind of giving that away. And two, holding the whole thing in radical acceptance and compassion for myself. If I was a perfect mother, maybe I would just celebrate, but I'm an imperfect mother with my own humanness. And then to offer that gift to Chandra, who can then explore her own. It did give her room to really say, yeah, we've got this and we're concerned about this. So that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to focus our breathing with spacious awareness and using the body as a bridge to build our capacity to see perhaps a little more clearly what's happening inside. And then, of course, we know this with our whole beings, to hold compassion and non-judgment. As quick as we're off in the stories, as quick as we're often in the judgment, I should have responded differently on the family Zoom. And then I have to come back with compassion for myself. As soon as I catch that, as soon as I get filled with the worry for others, as you described earlier, then we catch that and bring us back to, love, compassion for ourselves, and then let that radiate out to others. It is hard being alive. There's a lot of intensity in this world. So how do we wrap ourselves in the love? So the very nature of our awareness is to know what is happening in this moment, accepting reality as it presents itself to us. And then when we notice the resistance, which is me going on family Zoom, and that's going, oh, right, that's me pulling away from the present moment and coming back over and over again with compassion and without judgment. That is what emerged for me in the moment, and that was real. And the next few days, Chandra texting and calling a couple of times a day, needing to be soothed that I was going to be there for her and that I was their person for them that could be there. So my compulsion, here's the final one before we begin our practice, my compulsion to appear okay to you externally, to appear as though I have it all together, this is for any of us, of course, is a way that I resist the present moment. My compulsion to appear okay to you externally is a way that I resist the present moment. So to speak our truths, sometimes to be silenced, that's not the same thing. The folks today who said, I choose to pass, sometimes that's what's needed. So to trust yourself and to recognize that my need to appear okay is a way that I resist the present moment rather than speaking my truth authentically with radical acceptance that this is me. So rather than defining ourselves by our limitations, we come to an acceptance of ourselves more deeply as we are, knowing these busy minds, knowing this emotional messiness that we are raw, hot, messy humans, and that that's our nature. So the more often I can choose sometimes in situations where people have shown me that have earned my trust, than to speak my truth in ways that allow me to drop the artifice that I am, okay when I'm, not inside or using examples or stories, and then staying out of the busy story about that. So those are my ruminations. Those are my research that come to it. And then today we're going to use the body as the bridge and an invitation to continue again to be in deep compassion, radical self-acceptance when you're noticing you're traveling in your mind with the stories about who and what you are in ego, and instead to keep coming back,